Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Straw Hat Movies coming at you once again, and today we're actually not going to be talking about a movie because today Avatar: The Last Airbender has appeared on Netflix, all 3 seasons, and I'm super excited about it. See, Avatar is one of my favorite shows of all time, hands down one of my favorite animated shows of all time, but one of my favorite shows in general, right? Because it's just so dang good, and that's just the understatement of the century because it has so many different themes. The characters are iconic, the fight choreography, the animation. You can just go down the list when it comes to talking about this show. So what I want to do is I want to give a full series review right here and now talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender. So let's jump right into it. So for those of you guys who've been living under a rock, Avatar: The Last Airbender is essentially a show about 4 nations that definitely represent the 4 elements: fire, earth, air, and water. The Fire Nation ends up raging war on the other 3 nations, and they pretty much wind up taking over the world, basically like Nazis that can shoot fire out of their mouths, hands, and feet. We follow who the Avatar is, who is a person that can bend/control all the elements at once. All the other nations can only control, everyone can control one element of their nation, whereas the Avatar can control all 4. And he is the one tasked with keeping the balance in the world, not just in the physical, but the spiritual. Aang is the Avatar. He is an air nomad who runs away from his responsibility, gets submerged in an ice cubicle, and he wakes up 100 years later when the Fire Nation is like tightening their grip on the rest of the world. In the first season, it definitely introduces us to a lot of the characters at play who we're going to be getting to know through this journey. You have Aang, who I just mentioned, Katara, who's part of the water tribe and a waterbender herself, her brother, who's a kind of like a bumbling comedic relief, but he's also like sees himself as like a strategist in battle strategy. Zuko, who's the main antagonist of the first season, someone who was banished by his father, who's the fire lord of that nation, and his goal is to capture the Avatar to restore his honor. And the show itself in the first season is pretty much very much like a it's a kid show. It's definitely more lighthearted. It's the most lighthearted season of the bunch. The first thing that Aang says when he wakes up is, "Do you want to go penguin sledding?" And it's very lighthearted from there. But you still get introduced to a lot of the ideas of where this show is probably gonna go, right? You get introduced to his task, like he needs to master the other 3 elements in order to take on the Fire Lord one day. You get introduced to like the different concepts, like him being able to talk to his past lives because the Avatar gets reincarnated from one nation to the next. And so the conversations that he has with the Avatar previous him, Avatar Roku, who ironically was part of the Fire Nation, is really, really fun to see. And then like when they tie in like a lot of the spiritual things like the moon spirit and the spirit of balance and even Ko, the face stealer, things like that is just so cool for a kid's show to be doing. But then the thing that really draws you in is like the fight scenes, where it's like it's a fight scene that mixes martial arts with like powers where people bend the elements, and it's really cool how they take each fighting style and they match it with whatever element it is. So Earth Nation has a very strong stance, so a lot of their movements are very like rigid and hard and very like pounding, whereas the Water Tribe, whenever they fight, it's very fluid and it's very like go with the flow. Really cool how they accomplished that in the first season. But going into the second season, which is book 2, Earth, that's when I feel like the show really starts to hit its stride, right? It really like dives into the political intrigue of the Avatar world. Not only that, it really like tackles head on what the Fire Nation, the devastation that the Fire Nation has brought within those 100 years they've waged war on the world. You see things like refugees, like people who've been burned by Fire Nation soldiers. You've seen people lose their homes because the Fire Nation has taken over their villages. Then when you get to like, then you like start to reach these whole new locales like Omashu, which is like an Earth Kingdom, or the Earth Kingdom itself, which is the capital and was able to withstand the onslaught of the Fire Nation for many, many years. You meet characters like Toph, who like Toph is just one of the best characters in the entire show. She's a blind girl who pretty much uses the sensors in her feet to kind of like be able to see, kind of like Daredevil, but if Daredevil can control the freaking earth. You get introduced to all these things, and then this is when you really get into like what makes the show so great. And that what I'm saying in that is the character development. Everyone in this show in season 2 starts to grow tremendously. Where Zuko starts off as like an antagonist to capture Aang, here he's really struggling on what he wants to do, and this is like the start of like his entire character arc, where he doesn't know if what he's doing is right. He doesn't know if capturing the Avatar is going to restore his honor in the eyes of his father. And then you get introduced to characters like Azula, his sister, who is more cold and more calculating than Zuko ever was as a villain. And then you can kind of see like what makes Zuko kind of, yeah, he's still an antagonist, but it makes him more three-dimensional, where you have Azula, who's like definitely a villain and she knows what she wants. So it kind of like highlights Zuko's like trajectory in that. Aang struggling with things like learning earthbending, him being an airbender, and like learning the opposite of air, which is earth, which is more rigid, whereas air is more fluid. It's really cool how you see each one of these characters like grow in their own right. Even Sokka, he kind of like, he's still comedic relief, but they found a way to make Sokka more into like the heart and soul of the team. And I know you usually just give those titles to people who don't really have much to offer, but they really show that Sokka definitely is the brains of Team Avatar. Like, Aang is pretty much the LeBron James, but you still need a point guard to run that team, and Sokka is definitely the point guard. How it ends, it's just like, wow, it's only going to get darker from here, which leads us directly into season 3, Fire, which is the last season where he really does have to take on the Fire Lord. It's crazy because then it introduces the Avatar and his team like kind of like now in hiding, and kind of like them on the run from the Fire Nation. And it's really cool because then this is when you kind of get to see Zuko's entire like arc really play out. This is definitely where Zuko starts to realize who he is as a character, and him moving towards his destiny as well. You have Aang like realizing that the path that he's been on is no longer like a fun and games type of thing, but it's getting more and more serious the more he like puts off like his duties and learning like how to bend the 4 elements. Even Katara becomes like gets more in touch with like who she is as like a waterbender, and her herself becomes like a waterbending master. And even Sokka, I keep going back to the Sokka, man, the fact that they even had a full episode dedicated to him knowing that he's not quote unquote special. He doesn't have bending powers. He's the only one on the team without bending, but he still finds a way to make himself useful. He has a whole episode dedicated to him training himself in the art of the sword, which is a phenomenal episode and an underrated episode if you ask me. I'll be remiss if I didn't talk about the last 4-part episode of the finale. That finale is probably one of the best finales in any show. It wraps up so many awesome like timelines and character arcs and storylines. It's just everything that comes together. It just comes together so beautifully. Like Aang realizing like what he has to do, like kill the Fire Lord, or responding kindness, or even Sokka like pretty much like making sacrifices for his family. It just has some of the best choreographed fight scenes as well. Like you could tell the animators really were just flexing at this point. But man, like Avatar: The Last Airbender is such a great show. Like I've watched it, I own this show. But now that it's on Netflix, like I just watch it even more, just like random episodes that I really like. And it's hard to find a flaw within the show. It really is. The only episode that I really can't stand, but I'll still watch it if it's on, is the episode of The Great Pass, when he has to escort these 2 warring factions across this this canyon. But other than that, man, the show's damn near perfect. I absolutely love it. Have you seen Avatar: The Last Airbender? You guys let me know what you think. Are you going to be watching it on Netflix? Please do. And as always, thank you so much for watching my videos, guys. I really appreciate it. Make sure you hit the like button so I can keep doing this. Make sure you hit the subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications for more of my videos. And that's it for me, guys. You guys take care. Thanks for kicking it.